RV owners, behind me is a brand new RV from a brand new manufacturer. This is the Axiom Vendetta, and if I'm not mistaken, I'm the very first person to do an inspection on one of these. So not only are you going to get a full review today, but you're also going to get what I found on the inspection. Now, again, this is a new manufacturer. They've just hit the road. This is one of the first ones actually hitting the road. I'm going to be super honest with you guys, because that is what I'm about. I did not want to even make this video at this point. If you can't tell, I'm a little bit bummed. I had a lot of hopes. You know, some of the things I talked to the owners about, you know, they were striving for being the best with quality and fit and finish and getting all this stuff together, and I just don't see that. So that portion of the video was in the moment. I had just got done with my full inspection. I just got done speaking with the client and kind of going over some of the things I found before I sent them the finalized inspection. And I never posted the entire version of that video because, again, in the moment, I did let, I guess you can say, emotion create some of my response. I had some opinions in there that probably weren't very fair, and shortly after I had filmed that, I actually had a good conversation with the owners over at Axiom. Now, here's the thing. The reason I didn't post that one, again, was because there was a lot more opinion than there was fact, even though there was plenty of fact to generate that opinion. In speaking with Axiom, kind of, you know, I expressed exactly how I felt. I don't hold back. I talk to these manufacturers the same way that I talk to you guys, and I'm just blunt with all of it. And I flat out told them I was really upset showing up. I was careful about hyping up Axiom before it was launched. I had some great conversations with Axiom about what they were doing, and talked a lot about, you know, some of the stuff they were trying to do different, and their quality control process, all of that stuff. All of it seemed really good. You know, I'm not saying that like I fell for a trap or anything. I really did genuinely believe that that's what their mission was. And after talking with them for a little bit after this inspection, I still think that's what it is, but I think it was rushed. It was not ready. That's going to be what my final opinion is. It just wasn't ready. I feel like it was rushed to bring to the table, to get to the shows, to get on the road, to get their name out. And I feel like it was rushed, which is why that unit ended up in my hands. Now, when I say ended up in my hands, again, it is because they knew I was coming to inspect it. They knew my cameras were coming. I would have thought at the very minimum, even if Axiom was going to make a bad product, that product would be good. Now, when I did a review some years back on an early Brinkley model, when I found almost nothing wrong with it, it was as expected. It was one of the very first ones being shipped out. So of course they're going to make sure it's perfect. Let's see what it looks like in a couple years. And that's what I anticipated with this inspection. You know, this one's going to be flawless, but let's see what it looks like in a couple years when they finally get into production and they start mass producing units. Except I got it a little bit backwards. The unit that I inspected, which again is the first one on the road, was not ready. And for it to arrive like that, it did make a statement to me. I really felt like, you know, again, the first one, making the first impression, knowing that there's going to be a YouTube video on it and everything, I would have personally not trusted anybody yet to make sure that was right. I, as a business owner, would have been going through that thing, but down on my hands and knees myself, making sure that unit was flawless. Right here, I have the entire inspection report, which has been given to the customer. I have confirmation, they've looked over it. The reason I have to have a delay is my client is the one paying me, so I'm going to make sure that they see the inspection report. I don't want them to find out about things about their unit through a YouTube video or people texting them like, hey, did you know that, you know, your unit had this? So I'm going to go through the inspection report. I'm going to show you the pictures I took on the inspection report. I'm going to show you the notes I took on the inspection report. There is no RV review like what you're about to see. This is quite literally you guys watching the inspection report from a third-party inspection to see the things that were found. This is how the unit arrived. This unit's never done any time on the road. The customer hasn't taken it anywhere yet. So we'll get right into it. We'll start with the exterior, which is the roof and exterior of the unit. This is when I go through, make sure we don't see any large sealant gaps or areas that aren't sealed. This area was pretty extensive. Every unit, I don't care what it is, give me a high-end unit, give me a cheap unit, I'm gonna find a ton of sealant gaps. I don't think there's any inspector out there who will ever go through a unit and be like, yeah, every bit of sealant looks good. This one had quite a few. Quite a few photos taken from the exterior. We could sit here and flip through every single one of them. Let's talk about some of the biggest ones that I found. Now, for starters, Axiom is doing things like some other manufacturers moving forward where there is no exterior sealant. They are just relying on the butyl tape behind whatever it is that is attached to the unit. But they are still using sealant where necessary, so we're going to talk about those areas. The first one you're going to see here is at both ends of the rear roof seam. You can see there was a seam that they put on both sides. Instead of just doing one piece, there is a seam at both sides, and neither one of those were sealed at the roof, and I can almost guarantee you water is going to get in there. Again, this was at both sides, both corners of the rear seam. It almost seems like they put one straight piece and then made two corner pieces, but then put seams in there. One piece would have been a much better option. And even if you are going to do multiple pieces, they have to be sealed properly. Then we'll talk about the front curbside corner here. The front curbside corner, as well as the street side corner, had two very large gaps in it. Now, as you can see, they're trying to do like an Eternabond flashing type deal up there. They're using very limited sealant, but what's kind of ironic here is they don't have anything on the roof. The air conditioners aren't on the roof. The skylights aren't on the roof, vents aren't on the roof, so it's a pretty bare roof. There's very limited spots to seal. The four corners are the most common places to leak on a roof, but those were the areas that were missed. The attention wasn't there, not on quality control or when it was being done. Another concerning thing that I found, which I'll show you here, is they are using a corner radius along the corners of the roof. This is something a lot of manufacturers have done. Very few have gotten it right because this thing, again, is brand new and it already appears to be separating. I can actually move it underneath the membrane, and as you can see in the photos here, you can see that it has actually started to show through the roof, and again, the unit is brand new. Now for the exterior. Kind of upset that there was anything wrong with the roof because, again, there's very limited things that are actually attached to the roof, and that was one of the things that they boasted the hardest, that they were changing roofs. That was one of the things I was most excited about. So to find typical stuff you find on a very cheap unit, on that unit, on top of the fact that it was in like the four most common areas that you would find a leak on a roof, that's a little concerning. And for the record too, because I know somebody's going to ask, I'm not doing a full breakdown. Josh the RV nerd, you know, he's got a pretty good breakdown on his channel on all the Axiom units, but I know someone's going to ask about the roof. As far as right now, I know they're using alpha. I don't know, I know they're questioning some ideas going forward. Again, I've had some great conversations with them. I don't know what they're going to end up doing in the long run, but right now on this unit, they were using alpha. So let's talk about the exterior and what I found on the exterior. Now, I could flip through pages all day on little sealant gaps that I find on every single one. I have 47 photos in this area alone. I'm not going to sit here and pull up all 47. There were a lot of small little sealant gaps. Again, stuff that we find on every single unit that gets touched up by the dealer before it goes out. So that stuff wasn't a concern. We'll talk about what concerned me the most. And we're going to start with the thing that concerned me absolutely the most on this Axiom. I'm saying this Axiom because it was like the very first thing that I brought up to Axiom when I talked to them right after this inspection, and it was a thing that upset me the most about this entire inspection, and we haven't even made it inside yet. Now, again, this portion of my inspection report is on exteriors. It typically mostly covers sealants, but it will cover things on the exterior that I've spotted as well, which is typically like areas I feel like weren't assembled properly or something like that. This one has to do with the frame. Now, on the frame of this Axiom, you have a 12-inch I-beam frame. It's a pretty hefty frame. It's a very big and a very heavy unit, so it needs that. Several places throughout the frame, like where the hydraulic hoses went through, the holes were just cut so big and they weren't sealed. You know, the one for the hydraulic hoses and a couple wires to pass through was probably 2.5 inches in diameter. for about that much, you know, cables and hoses to pass through. So that was kind of the norm. I saw that in a few places. In my opinion, the less holes in the frame, the better. But this one was big. Literally, I mean, this was a very big hole. This hole that was cut in the frame, for whatever reason, looking at this picture, to pass through a piece of electrical conduit and a control wire for one of the condenser units for the mini splits. Little wild. I'm gonna be honest, it's a 6-inch hole that has been cut into a 12-inch frame, which is, no, I'm not a frame specialist by any means, but I actually did the math on this. That's not okay. That has definitely changed the structural integrity of that frame, and that area is directly over the axles. Now again, Axiom has told me that is not in the design spec, that is not how that is supposed to be, but that is what I found on this inspection. For unit number 1, again, all eyes are on this unit. How many eyes have been on it before and not one person has been like, hey, why is there this giant hole here? I'm usually looking for holes and writing in my notes that this hole is large enough that a mouse can get in. Sometimes I see them and I will make the joke that, hey, a whole squirrel could get in this one. You could fit a full-size cat, full-size raccoon through this hole. Never mind the fact that pests can get in, road spray can get in because it's right by the axles. You can't cut a hole in a frame that big without damaging its structural integrity. You just can't. They're addressing it. I don't know how. I haven't been informed on how they're addressing it. I will say they didn't take that information lightly. They definitely didn't try and fight me and say, oh, that's normal or anything like that. No, they're taking accountability for that. So I want to be fair and tell you guys that they are taking accountability for that, trying to figure out how it ended up there. I know this unit's passed through tons of hands, but it made it to mine with a giant hole in the frame. So now that we got that big elephant-sized hole out of the room, let's talk about the rest of the normal stuff that I found that was a little more on the concerning side. On the top of the slide rooms, they are using the Eternabond tape underneath, as well as some other form of seal underneath, I'm guessing butyl. They're not doing anything on top of the screws in the slide rooms. I kind of have a concern with this. I don't know if the Eternabond is enough underneath that it's actually going to create a seal around the screw. A lot of times you pull RV screws out, those little black screws, you will see rust on them because water likes to make its way past, and that's even with using butyl. So again, they are kind of trying different things that not many people have done or done in mass production. So I don't want to form too much of an opinion on this. I did note it as a concern. I didn't note it as like, hey, this has to be fixed before you picked it up. I noted that as a concern of mine. It was an opinion of mine, and I'm sticking with that is an opinion of mine that I personally don't think that that's going to work out, but I'm open to being proved wrong. Now this one right here, I can save you quite a few pictures because this was every single slide room where the top corners of the fascia where they were joined together just were not sealed all that great. You can see where water can definitely get in there. There's plenty of space. It cut the Eternabond tape short, again, because they're not using it in the typical fashion, so they're trying something new. That's not going to work out. That's not really an opinion. That's actually just fact. That is not going to work out. Again, lots of little sealant gaps like this one. This was on top of a window. I'm not going to cover every single one of these because, again, those are on every single unit. Here, and I'll show you another photo. One of the slide toppers was damaged. Axiom did install the slide toppers. I don't know if they were already damaged, if it grabbed a tree branch on the way there. It's a very big unit, so I can't imagine towing it through tight spaces is very much fun. This isn't something you would expect to see on every Axiom unit, but again, this was just how it was presented to me. I'd also like to note that on the slide toppers, all of the slide toppers were missing at least one gimp screw. The gimp screw is the screw that goes in the fabric after it's done being installed and adjusted to keep the fabric from sliding around and getting out of adjustment. All of the slide toppers had some kind of wrinkle or adjustment issue, and then looking closer I found that all 4 of them were missing at least one gimp screw, some of them both of them, so the fabrics weren't staying in place. Just a minor thing, but it's a lot of those minor things. Now this one here, you can see this is the lower slide fascia. I'm up on a scissor lift looking down. That's the lower slide fascia, and you can see some larger gaps. Again, they're going with no sealant, and they're relying on butyl or a Turnabond behind the fascia. But when you have gaps that are sometimes up to 1/4 of an inch thick that are not small enough for the butyl to actually meet both surfaces, you're going to have water intrusion. And even if they don't have water intrusion now, you're essentially just creating a cup to allow water to sit in there, and it's going to find its way past that sealant inside there. It's the whole reason I'm still for exterior sealant on the RV, even if you are doing some fantastic sealing product behind it, because the exterior sealant, what it always has been, is flashing. It is to direct water away from the main seal. Same with your roof seals. The lap sealant is not the main seal. The butyl seal underneath things is the main seal. The lap sealant is essentially flashing to flash the water away. Now this situation here, I found in quite a few areas actually where there was an exterior sealant because it's designed not to have it, but the gap was so large or it was installed a little too wavy to where you can see right inside. It was typically on the slide fascia where they just could not get it on there smooth enough or flat enough to where you didn't have those gaps. While we're on slide rooms, I had this piece of trim here that was installed at like kind of a weird angle. I know nothing is level, and a level doesn't exist in an RV. We don't use levels on anything, but at least, you know, I don't know if they had the glasses on like this when they installed it. There was also a broken screw on there. Broken screws are usually concerning for two reasons. One, was it over torqued and the head actually snapped off, or did it catch something? Sometimes when you see on certain slide systems, when you start seeing screws getting sheared off, it either means that something's getting hung up, something's hitting those screw heads. I didn't find any issues with the slide room. It was just that one broken screw, but either way, it seemed like something that somebody would catch before the final inspection. Right here was one of the side vents for the garage. These are the little ones you can pop open to allow some air to come in there. And on both sides, I found these with big areas of leaks. These are using no exterior sealant. They just have butyl in them, but there were areas where there was no butyl for like almost an inch, and I could actually see light from inside the coach, outside the coach through that gap. Now, underneath the slides, the way they are kind of sealing up the floor area, if you will, manufacturers all kind of have their own way of doing this, how they wrap it. Axiom is using a Turnabond style tape. I don't know if it's actual Turnabond, but it's a Turnabond style tape. It's underneath the whole slide room. It's in all the corners. Every slide room that I found it on had heavy fish mouths, which is like the wrinkles, which are going to allow water, or the tape was already peeling off. There were several areas I found where the tape was already peeling off. Again, the unit is brand new, hasn't even gone on its first vacation yet. So for that to be falling off is kind of worrisome. What's it going to look like a year from now? More importantly, what's it going to look like a year and a half from now when the warranty's done? Now, this unit has the LED strips that go along the entire side, has RGB, does your turn signals and stuff. I found a lot of issues with sealant on those. A lot of issues. There were tons of sealant gaps along the top of it. As you can see here, I had where like the wire passes through, there was a whole hole, probably at least a little over 1/4 inch in diameter, that just wasn't sealed. Perfect place for water to sneak right up into the walls. Now, Axiom is using Asdel on the interior as well as the exterior walls, so it's a composite material. It's not really going to be harmed by water. That does not mean you want water in your walls. Again, as far as those LED strips went, you can almost count both of them down the entire coach in their entirety as a line item, because it was just every foot or so, every 2 feet, I would find a sealant gap. And then another thing that was a little more concerning, and I'm fully open to being corrected on this, but underneath that LED strip is where two sections of wall meet. So those two sections of wall meet there, the bottom of that LED strip isn't sealed. I can actually just pick it up and see the seam between those two walls, and there's nothing stopping water from getting between there or behind there. That was a little bit concerning. Maybe there's sealing behind there, and I just, you know, obviously I can't see that. So I'm just reporting on what I saw. I would count that as a place where it could leak. I would think just sealing the bottom of the LED strip would, again, flash water away, especially driving down the road in the rain. It's going to be spraying up and getting right underneath there. This was noted on the exteriors as well because it has to do with the exterior, but the rear entry steps, there was no way to close them or open them without the latch or like the bracket that hits the doorway from hitting the screen door, because the screen door cannot open all the way. Seems like a silly thing, but there was a couple things on this RV that were like that I guess just didn't make it really through engineering. For instance, the front compartment, when completely opened and stuck up in its little magnetic holder, if you were to close one of the slides, you would smash the compartment door because it sits right up against the column. But if the compartment was mounted literally maybe 2 inches back, you wouldn't have that. The rear door interferes with the main slide, so if you were to be trying to close the slide while that door was open, bye-bye door. Now, I know these are like, well, yeah, you close the door before you do it, but some things should have restrictions. You know, sometimes there'll be a door strut that, you know, stops the door from going to that point. The compartment door one, I mean, a lot of times your compartment doors are open while you're closing up because you're throwing that last few things in there. So if you go to close that slide with the compartment door, you're gonna have a problem. And same with that rear entry door. I do believe the dealer said they were gonna be installing a pneumatic strut for the client. I just feel like these might have been oversights when, you know, final engineering or final design came about. You know, had they had that compartment door open and saw it interfering with the slide, it's like, well, why can't we just move that compartment back 2 inches? I personally didn't see any reason why that compartment couldn't go back 2 inches, but that's my opinion. And then I'll just show you a few of the larger sealant gaps I saw along the outside. There were a bunch of little ones. These were some of the larger ones, and then we can stop talking about sealants because, again, it's every one of them. I just wanted to make it a point that this is how it arrived during the inspection. Now, I started this part of it with the frame. We had the hole in the frame. That was the most concerning thing about the inspection, to be honest with you. It was the thing I was concerned with the most, something you should be concerned with too. There was one more that, again, I'm perfectly open to being corrected, but this right here seemed funny. These outriggers that come off the frame, we've had some issues with them. They've been known to be a little thin. We've seen them bend. We've seen people have issues with them. They get destroyed during blowouts. Sometimes heavy slide rooms can mess them up. It looks like they were too short, and then this little piece of square tubing was tack welded on top of it to bring them out a little bit more. I could be wrong. It didn't seem like it was supposed to be like that. I feel like if you needed longer outriggers, just put longer outriggers or spec the frame for it. Again, this is unit 1 and they're learning, you know, things are going to change as far as final production, but this is how I received the unit and what I saw, and it just seemed a little funny to me. I'd be happy to be corrected on that as well. Maybe it's just fine, not a lot of weight sitting there, but that's not really the way I see it, being that the slide room is right above that. And I don't think tacking on square tubing screams quality. I think just a properly sized outrigger or the frame being spec'd with a properly sized outrigger is not too much to ask for. If you look here, you will see that they are using plastic slide skis. I wasn't real happy to see that. Even on some budget-friendly models from some other manufacturers, I'm really trying not to, you know, compare to other manufacturers in this video. I've seen some of them switching over to metal slide skis, or at least better slide skis than these flimsy plastic ones, because as you can see, they like to warp, and it's a perfect place for water to worm its way into that slide floor. And I did find that on a few different slides. On the note of slide rooms, didn't have any issues with any of the slide rooms moving. They were actually working great. They are using 2 different rack and pinion on the main slide rooms. Those are both 3-arm rack and pinion. But on the 2 bedroom slides in the front, they are using Slim Rack Plus. Don't know already, Slim Rack Plus is just a newer variant of the Slim Rack system, hopefully with less issues. I have a YouTube video on that if you want to check it out. It was posted last week or so. The couple things I did find with the slide rooms was on this one here, as you can see, the drip cup at the bottom of the column was kind of damaged, probably during installation. The drip cups are what help direct any water that makes it into the column away. So any water that makes it past the seals in the column, it will help direct the water outside. But in its current state, it doesn't look like it's going to hold very much water before it starts spilling into the RV. A lot of the ones that I have seen that are smashed or damaged are leaking, and that's why I'm repairing them. Underneath one of the slide rooms, there was a piece of hose tubing, some kind of drain tube or something, sitting right on top of the gear block for the slide mechanism, which that was definitely going to be a problem, not just for that piece of tube, but it would potentially damage the slide mechanism. And then on the note of slide mechanism, I found that one of the heads coming off of the arms that supports the room, the bolts were just completely loose. And I mean completely loose, just sitting there. So that was a little bit concerning. You know, I'm guessing somebody made an adjustment, but then just never tightened those again. But that's the key to double checking end of line quality control. It was obvious to me from like 10 feet away. So I would have thought somebody would have caught something like that. So moving on to the leveling portion of it, no issues with the leveling system whatsoever. The 0 point was calibrated perfectly. Everything about it was good. I did note by the pump that there was a little bit of fluid. Sometimes that's from the factory just filling it. Somebody spills some. I couldn't find any leaks, but I am also not diagnosing anything while I'm inspecting. And then I also noticed that all of the connections, being that this pump is located underneath the coach, you know, where it's exposed to road spray, road salt and everything, there was no corrosion protection on any of the lugs for the electrical connections. At minimum, there should have been at least a spray on stuff to prevent those terminals from corroding, because they're going to. Now for the electrical system, I actually did not really find a whole lot of issues with the electrical system. They were pretty organized with some things. I did find a few things that concerned me with this particular model. As you can see here, they have these sliding doors in the front compartment, and those sliding doors actually cover all of the slide controllers are in there, all of your breakers and resettable breakers, your converter, your inverter. They're all behind two sliding doors in the front compartment. The problem I had with it, no loose connections, none of that stuff I typically find. They actually did it really well, and they did it pretty neatly. The little slots they cut into the doors are not sufficient enough to have that inverter and converter and those controllers in there running, because as soon as I opened the door, I was rushed with heat. There's plenty of space along the side that they could have added some type of airflow fan, something where it can actually transfer some of that hot air out of there. Maybe on future units they're going to, you know, again, they're probably learning from this one, and you know, that is kind of one of the reasons I said it was too early. I don't think one of the learning units should have been put on the road. I think maybe had some people look at it so they can get this feedback and then put the final units on the road, because I definitely see that temperature in that electrical cabinet being a problem because there is no ventilation. The fireplace worked fine, but I had some electrical system issues with it, because it does have an electrical management system that kept wanting to kick off the fireplace for whatever reason. I'm sure it's something dumb. No air conditioners or anything were running at that time, so there was no reason for it to be like trying to shut off the fireplace. But for some reason that cut out multiple times. And I did confirm, because out of my own curiosity, the fireplace was fine. It was just that that system was cutting the power away from it. I think the only real electrical issue I found was this on one of the mini split air conditioner condensers mounted underneath. They have a watertight conduit and watertight connector that connects to it. It just was not tightened really at all. It was loosely sitting there, so the seal had no contact made to it. So ultimately water is going to get into the electrical connection. That unit happens to be right near the axles, so it's going to be getting all the road spray and everything. So it is very likely water will make its way into that connection. Now this picture I'm actually going to put into plumbing, because there was more plumbing than there was electrical, but this is a plumbing and electrical issue. Through that raccoon-sized hole in the frame, I noticed that there was a cross member going across, and there were some pipes and wires laying over the top of it. And when I looked close, I could actually already see bits of red and blue plastic from the PEX. I saw some yellow from the yellow Romex wire that was going over it, where it had already started chafing those wires and pipes from sitting there with no protection, no grommet, nothing for them to sit on, not secured to anything. So they're just sitting there rubbing while the thing's moving. And that ultimately was causing issues. That was through one spot I can see in the underbelly. So my concern is that those lay on cross members and frame members going all the way across, and there's just multiple points where that's happening. It's already happening in one spot. That's enough of a concern. Is it happening anywhere else? Again, as far as appliances, they all worked great. The refrigerator was cooling really well. Made a couple funny noises while I was there, so I did document that just so that it was documented. I can't say nothing is wrong with it at this point in time, because again, it's cooling, but there was about 3 times while I was doing the inspection that the compressor made a less than friendly noise. There was this right here. This is an emergency exit window. And that window is not able to be opened because the couches sit in front of the lever that has to open. I will say, just to be clear, that there is a working one in the front and rear of the coach. This middle one is technically not required. Not sure why they used emergency exit windows there, but you can't open them either way. I also had the windows directly across from that. They were actually missing the turn knobs to open them, so couldn't even open those. And then there was the fit and finish. Now, I have a couple photos here. I'll show you of some things I noted. Realistically, I don't spend too much time on fit and finish for my inspections. That's not why my customers hire me. Customer can look through with their own two eyes and you can see, you know, gaps and walls that aren't straight and walls damage to the wall. I try and focus on the, you know, the actual functional things of the unit. This one, you know, I understand, especially after the phone call after this inspection, there were a few things that, you know, again, this was a very early unit. This is what started from a prototype and eventually hit the road. And the issue is throughout time, you know, windows had been removed and replaced and removed and replaced and switched with this one and they tried this one. So I understand some of it has been mangled with, but there was a lot of fit and finish issues with this one. You know, I'm not going to say it looked like a COVID unit or anything, but it definitely had its fair share of like trim pieces that they just didn't quite hit their mark. There was lots of stuff that was scuffed up. You know, I know it went to a show, but some of it you can tell was like kind of during installation, you know, things were kind of just smacked in place and things weren't lined up properly when they were attached, and, you know, lots of open gaps and open corners on trim work. That was a little disappointing. It wasn't the worst thing I've ever seen. In all honesty, if I had to rate it, I'd say fit and finish was obvious, a 7 out of 10. It wasn't like it was a nightmare. I want to be clear on that. I just think for what it was supposed to be, new brand, luxury ticket price, all right? Like, sale price on these is not cheap. So, you know, again, without trying to compare them to other people, I just expected a higher standard for some of that stuff. I spoke with my client who was purchasing the unit. You know, they had a similar opinion on that matter, that just for the cost of the unit and what it's boasted to be, that there shouldn't be that many gaps and things that look askew. And again, without boring you guys with all of the pictures, that's the gist of kind of what I found. And I'm gonna stand behind my opinion that I just don't think it was ready. I do really have hopes that they're gonna do better. That is what they want, it's what I want. I don't wanna report to you and tell you that it's not what I expected at this current point in time. Right now, that's where it sits. That is right now. I wanna be clear on that. I've actually already told Axiom, this video is going to get posted. There's no way around that. I didn't really want to post this video because I don't want this video to hurt a company so early on. But at the same time, I have to remember it was Axiom who let that unit go into that bay and get inspected like that. I can't make excuses for them. I have to be loyal to you guys, my followers, the RV owners. That's who I'm loyal to. Yes, do I try and build good relationships with these companies, and do I want them to succeed, and do I want them to do better for RV owners, for the RV community as a whole? Yes, and nothing can get better if we're not honest. If us as professionals like myself cannot be honest with you and not sugarcoat things, then we can't go anywhere. So this video, you know, like I told them, is gonna get posted, but that does not mean that I'm just going to forever tell you, hey, Axiom is not the one, because unit number one was you know, I don't want to use the word flop, but it wasn't what was anticipated. I will say, I truly do believe, after talking with them, that they're pretty upset that that unit made it to me that way. But again, somebody should have been in charge and made sure, hey, get that thing right. And then they should all be right going after that. Let's be clear on that too. I'm not saying just because I inspected that one, only that one should be. They should all have that high standard to them for that price tag. I think if we give them some time to perfect it, this feedback should help them. It's, you know, it's going to hurt them initially. I get that. You know, it's not going to be a good thing. People are going to clip things I've shown and said in this video and try and put it in all the groups and stuff. That's fine. But you're hearing it from my mouth now. I'm not telling you don't put your faith into Axiom. I do have hopes for them. A lot of you guys know that I started off saying not so great things about Alliance RV, and now it's one of my top picks. So do with that information what you will. Again, I can't officially say like, hey, I'm endorsing this product right now and I'm telling you this is great. I'm giving you a recommendation on it. But I am telling you to give it some time. Let them actually get the thing rolled out. Let them perfect these issues. Let them watch this video. Let them take accountability for what I found on this one and see where they go. That's what I'm trying to do. I do still have hopes that they do end up doing exactly what they've said they're going to do and revolutionize the RV industry and give you guys a quality product. In the meantime, if you guys like this video or didn't like this video, let me know in the comments below. I do want to do some more of these. I do quite a few inspections every year. I like to focus on newer stuff, and I want to know what you guys think of this style of review. This is more than just, hey, look at all the pretty stuff. I'm breaking down my entire inspection report on this particular one and showing you guys the good and the bad. Now the good, again, you want to go watch Josh the RV Nerd, Matt's RV Reviews. They've all done the Axioms. They're more focused on, you know, what it has, all of its features, and the floor plan. So if you're interested in that, make sure you check them out. In the meantime, if you guys want to see some more tech tips, tricks, and even some tours and RVs, make sure you guys press that subscribe button.